Okay, so this video is part one of two parts on how I built that shed greenhouse. Now, I built that about 3 years ago, and I did upload this video to my gardening channel, but I thought, because this channel is kind of more about woodworking and stuff, I thought you guys would like to see exactly how I built that. So this is part one of how I built that shed greenhouse. Okay, I'm in my garage working on a project, and then because my video was uploading this one here on building the shed greenhouse, but then I realized, you know what, I need to actually shoot a disclaimer before the video because I know people are probably going to, they're probably going to nail me down on a lot of things that I did on it that were probably wrong to them. But here's the deal. It's like I said in my last video, I'm not an engineer, I'm not a carpenter. So the way that I did it may not be up to your standards, may not be up to carpenter standards, and probably a lot of people are probably going to have a stroke on the way I did some of it. But it's okay, because here's the deal. Like for instance, the very first thing I know that people are going to say is I built it on 4x4 frame. Almost 30 years ago, I built another shed on 4x4 frame on the ground on plastic. And that thing right now is still, it's like the day I built it. So to me, I'm just following past experience, and history tells me that the 4x4s for me are going to be perfectly fine for the size of the shed that I'm building and for the greenhouse foundation. So that's going to be the first one I'm going to get criticized on. So I'm going to go ahead and try to get some insert some video where I think there may be some questions that people would have about my methods and why I did things the way I did. But it's too late now. It's built. But there was something else I was going to tell you, but just I don't know what it is. Now, when I went to edit these videos that I have, I counted them all up and realized I shot over 6 hours of footage. And so you guys don't want to see 6 hours of me building that shed greenhouse. So what I did was I condensed it down, and the videos that I'm uploading are not very instructive. They're not a lot of detail. I do give some measurements and whatnot, but some of it I just kind of just pushed on through because I just wanted to get it up, and I think you guys can get the gist of it just by watching the videos. And if you want to follow along, if you are going to follow along and do it exactly like me, and wind comes along and blows it down, don't blame me, because like I said, I'm not an engineer, but it's going to last a long time. It's going to outlast me, I guarantee it. So okay, so this is the shed portion of the foundation. It's made with 6 4x4s, 4 8-footers. There's 2 in the front and 2 in the back that I've secured with those metal plates, and then 2 6-footers on each end. Okay, so for the greenhouse portion of the foundation, I'm going to cut 2 7-footers, and then I'm going to go 12 feet across. And I have a 10-foot 4x4, so I'm going to attach a 2-foot 4x4 to the 10-foot to make 12 feet. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the 8-foot 4x4s and 1 of the 10-footers. And I'm just going to use a scrap from one of the 6-footers over there to do it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's 8 8-foot 4x4s and 1 10-foot 4x4. Now, I was going to get a 12-footer, but they didn't have them in stock, so it would have been nice to have a 12-foot 4x4. I couldn't get it, so I'm just going to have to piece them together. Okay, so my pieces are cut. I have a 7-footer there, a 7-footer there, and a 10-footer here, and a 2-foot piece there. Now, I'm centering the greenhouse on the shed, so I came in 2 feet on each side. So, yeah, I was going to put it off to one side and then put a door right there. But then I decided, no, I'm going to have doors on the end of the shed. And then I have a door in the greenhouse, so I don't need a door there. So I just centered it on the shed. Okay, so it took a lot of leveling, but I finally got it completely level. North and south, east and west, and both sections, the greenhouse section and the shed section. So we should be good to go. I put black plastic down because I don't want to have any weeds. And in the greenhouse section here, I mean, of course it's logical for the shed section, but for the greenhouse, the soil here is not that great. It's really hard. And so in the greenhouse, I'm going to be growing in like small beds, large pots, and things like that. So this will be a good weed barrier. Okay, so there it is. The floor of the shed part is done. Now it's time to start working on the walls. Okay, so the overall height of this wall is 82.5 inches. Now that's just 1.5 inches shy of the 7 feet that I'm shooting for. And the reason being is because I'm going to have a top plate. Once I stand all the walls up, there'll be a top plate that goes around the top. So that's why this is 1.5 inches shorter than that. So on the sides here, on the very outside, I have two pieces that are 79.5 inches. Then I have a top piece, which is 76 3/4 or 78 3/4, and a bottom piece that's 78 3/4. And then I have a header up there made out of just 2x4s. I know probably 2x6 would have been better, but I want the head clearance. And so I've got two of those headers right there that are 75 3/4 inches long, and they're screwed together. And then I have two posts here that I'm going to marry together, and each one of those is 76 inches. So I've got four of them, two on each side, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I have some blocking in here that is 6.5 inches, and that will make up 11 inches here. So I've got 4.5, 6.5 for the blocking, 4.5 for these three, and that'll be 11 inches. So I got an 11 inch here. Now I put a double blocking here, blocking and a double 2x here because I wanted the strength, because I'm going to be hanging the doors on here. And I've got 6 of these blockings. Now overall, I used on each wall, I used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 2x4s for each end wall. And the wall on the other side is going to be exactly like this one. And I'm going to build custom doors for this right here. 4, 5, and the 6th one right there. So about every 16 inches I'm going to go up. This doesn't have to be perfect. I screwed this side into the header, and then I screwed my last block into this. And then this one, of course, is not screwed into anything except this here. But this tied into here, this will tie into this. And so I don't have to worry about tying this into there. Okay, so the side walls are going to be a challenge. Because the shed is so narrow, I can't build the wall on the floor and then stand it up. So I'm going to have to try to kind of build it in place. But It'll come out just fine. It's just going to be a small challenge here. I'm going to build it in I'm going to build each of them in pieces. So there'll be 2 pieces for the back wall and 2 pieces for the front wall. Okay, so laying out for my studs, I want to go 16-inch. However, I don't want to measure from the corner of my wall here. I want to go from the outside because I want to go from the outside of this wall because this is where I'm going to start my T111 siding. So I want to go from the outside of this to my 16 inches right here. Like that. And that's how I want to do it all the way down. So I want to come in like this and mark 16 inches. So it's actually going to be 12.5 inches to my first stud. Because I've got 3.5 here. Okay, so the width of each of these walls is 92.5. I'm going to have 2 walls here that I'm going to stand up separately. So 92.5 inches is half the distance between this wall and that wall. I'm going to have to hand hold this and kind of free float it. Don't get any tighter than that. Ooh, nice. Okay, the back wall is complete. Everything is level, squared up. Now I'm going to start on this wall here, the greenhouse side. And this is going to be a challenge because this now is an 8-foot wall, and I'm going to have to build it across these 4x4s. And so most of it's just going to be floating in the air as I screw it together, but that's okay. We'll make it work. So now I'm going to, let's build this wall here 8 feet, and actually like an inch shy of 8 feet total.
it's difficult because this shed isn't that wide. So I kind of have to free float this wall when I'm screwing it together, which works.
Many more tacos, I won't be able to fit through that thing. Whew. We are on 2 full weeks now with triple digits. Okay, so now I'm going to put my top plate on. Now what I'm going to do is, let me take this down. And now I've got this wall here, the end wall, that I want to tie into this. So my top plate is going to come over top of this side wall here, and the end wall. And what that will do is that'll tie these two walls together. Now the problem is this is 16 feet total. If I put just an 8-footer across here, what's going to happen is where these two walls join, it's going to end at that joint, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to put a 4x4 or a 4-foot piece of 2x4, and then an 8-foot piece, so I span across that separation, and then another 4-foot on the other end to tie that end wall to the side wall here. So a 4-foot, an 8-foot, and then another 4-foot. Okay, so for this top plate, I needed to bring this wall all the way out to the end because my roof rafters have to sit on top. So I just concocted this little blocking here. So I just took 2 pieces of 2x4, 6 1/4 inches, and then just put one small piece of 2x4 sitting on top of it. And that brings this all the way out like this. So it's just like this wall is coming up. So I'm going to screw this down and then screw the wall into this blocking here, and then that gives me my full width of wall across here. I'm going to do the same on the other side also. Okay, and then the last thing is to put the top plate on this 8-foot wall. Now there are a couple ways to do these walls, and another way to do this would have been to build a 7-foot wall here, just like the back wall, and then build a 1-foot wall on top of it to tie it to this end wall. And I could have done that, and I thought about it, but it would have been a little bit more work. It may have probably tied it together better, but I'm really not too concerned about it. Once I get this top plate on, then I get the sheeting and everything, it's going to be just as good. So I'm not really too concerned about it. You know, in some of these boards, unless you go to the hardware store and get the kiln dried and go through every piece, sometimes you just get this wood that's just not cooperative. But you work with what you have, and sometimes you get stuff that's a good price, but you have to beat it into submission, and I'm okay with that. Because in the long run, it'll all go together. Oh, look at that, it's perfect. Right on the end. Looks good. I know. Where are my safety glasses? But you know what? I love you guys on YouTube, but you know what? If I was to follow every rule that you guys mandate for me, I'd be in a suit of armor with a mask, probably a respirator, a pair of full face goggles, those earmuffs for shooting, you know, when you go out to target practice and whatnot. And so it's better off. I mean, when I'm sanding and when I'm cutting, I use all the protection. But when I'm just doing this, and yes, a screw can bounce back. It can hit me in the eye. And so I don't advocate being as dumb as me. I advocate that you use all the safety precautions. Don't be like me. I get it. And you guys are right, but I'm pig-headed. So the next thing I'm going to work on is all of the sheeting. All right, so all this sheeting here is 4 feet wide. Now I've got two 16-foot walls, so that means I need 4 and 4, which is 8. And these are a little over 6 feet. And so that means I need like 1.5 for each side. That would mean I need 11 sheets. Well, here's the deal. I bought 10 sheets. So I can do 4 and 4 on the long sides. 1 for this. And I'm guessing that because of this large opening, that this piece that I cut out is going to allow me to piece in this small section here on both sides. I'm going to put, now this sheeting is going to come down to within 1.5 inches from the ground. So that's going to give me, I'm going to put blocking in 1.5 inches high at the bottom so that I can take my siding and set it right on the blocking, and then I'll be able to tack it on without having to hold it into place. So that's why I did it this way. So basically 1.5 inches of the T111, or 1.5 inches of the treated 4x4 is going to be exposed. And that's fine. I need to have it up a little bit anyways, because if you go all the way to the ground, what's going to happen is if any water was to get higher than 1.5 inches or higher than the bottom of the 4x4, then water's going to start wicking up that T111. So I don't want that T111 to go all the way to the ground. I want to keep it 1.5 inches or so from the ground. In fact, a lot of people don't even go that high. They go like 3 inches from the ground, which either way works. You know, the higher you go, the less chance there is of water getting into the T111. So I'm going to go 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches. The way that I measured this is that this, from here all the way to the bottom of the 4x4, is 8 feet 1.5 inches. So basically the T111 is going to be 1.5 inches off the ground. And I think that's going to be high enough. I don't get a lot of water in here. And this is sloped, and so the water usually runs off. So 1.5 inches I think is going to be just fine. So for nails, I like to use these nice thick ones. They're 1.5 inches galvanized. And they are, believe it or not, the joist hanger nails. Now you can use any you want. A lot of people use the thinner ones on here, but I don't. I like the nice thick ones because I've seen the thinner ones pop out. Okay, so for the end walls here, I think what I'm going to do is just take and rip 11-inch pieces off of a full sheet. And so put one here, and then just piece in this. Rather than putting it up here and then nailing it in and then have to cut it out, I think that's just more of a hassle. Now let me show you what's going to happen up top. Yeah, that split here, didn't it? That's no big deal. I'm not worried about it. Now the T111 is going to come all the way up to the top right here, even with this and across. So let me grab a 2x4 and show you what it's going to look like. The roof rafters are going to go like this. Now the T111 is going to come up here even with the top of the wall. And so I'm going to cut the siding underneath this. It's not going to come up here, it's going to come underneath this because I'm going to have a trim here. Okay, so I got this all pieced together. Now, the greatest advantage to putting the one full sheet up and then cutting the hole out is that, well, it'd come to, you know, like about here and you'd have to cut it out, is because you don't have to do this piecing together. And all of your seams fall perfectly. Now, all these nails, of course, are going to get covered up by trim. You won't see those. But the two things that I don't like about it is having to get it perfect, put little, you know, screw holes through here so I can run my lines, and then have to come up with a jigsaw or, you know, or the circular saw. This was just a lot easier for me just to rip two pieces out of 11. But it's definitely a lot cleaner if you put the piece up and then cut it out. So let me take you on the inside and show you what's going to happen as far as this piece, the bracing for the top of this and for under the roof rafter. Okay, so our roof rafter is going to come like this, right? It's going to actually cantilever over. So I'm going to draw a pencil line, and I'm going to cut all of this siding off. And then we have to run a 2x4 flat underneath the roof rafter. So what we have to do first is establish our angle. And this is easy as pie. Now, to figure out the angle of your roof, you just take your square, the tip of it goes right up to the top of the 2x4, and then you put it flush against your wall, like that. And that right there is your angle. Now, this doesn't have to be perfect, because when you're outside looking at the front or the back of your rafters, you're not going to be able to tell if it's even a quarter of an inch or half an inch off. It's just really close, and it's good enough for me. So this is what we're going to have to cut as far as angling the end of our 2x4s, like this. And this also comes into play in cutting our pieces for our bracing on the ends here, and I'll show you that. Now, you remember our angle that we figured out. I cut this board here, and this is my template. So I'm keeping this, and I use this for all of my cutting. I used it to cut the bevel on this. And this is beveled this way, of course, not this way. And this piece is going to go right up against the top plate, and it's going to sit right here like this. And then this is what the trim is going to get nailed to. And then this is kind of acting as a wall. And so my roof is going to cantilever over top of this. Now, it's in here that I'm going to put my bracing, like right here where I've got the seam. And I don't need it down here at the other end. So what I want to do is put my roof, one of my rafters on, just to make sure that it's completely straight and level. Say this is one of my roof rafters. And so that is actually pretty darn good. Okay, so I'm going to start on the roof now. And you're probably wondering, why did I do the sheeting on the back half and not the front before I started the roof? Well, here's the deal. This is a slanted roof, right? And so on the back side, if I would have done the roof first, the back side would have been hard for me to get the sheeting on, because when I got toward the top, I wouldn't be able to nail under the roof. Here, the roof is slanted upward. And so I can easily, when the roof is done, easily get to the top plate here to be able to nail in all of the sheeting. But on the back half, it's slanted downward, and so I can't get up inside of there. Okay, so here's how the roof is going to work. It's 16 feet total, the building is. But I want to cantilever over about a foot on each side. So I'm going to start in the center, and I'm going to go an 8-foot section. And then that means I'm going to have a 5-foot section on each side. Okay, so using the same angle that I used on the end truss supports, I cut these at 91.5 inches on the long side using that angle. Now on the truss supports, of course, the board is flat and it's beveled this way. But these, for the trusses, for the roof, they are going to go up like this. And using this bevel here, it will be parallel. The outside board will be parallel to the wall. So I'm going to go ahead and assemble this using the 8-footers and 7 of these 16-inch on center. Okay, now the fun part. What I'm going to do is, oh, there's one of my boards. I was missing a board, so I went and cut another one, and it was up here. I forgot I set it up here. Okay, so this center board right here should ride right along these two boards right here. Okay. You know what's funny? I'm not as strong as I used to be. I'm also not as tall. I've lost about a ½ inch or a 1/4 inch. Not that that would have helped. Okay. Okay, I'm going to make a mark at the 4-foot line. But first off, I got to get my tape measure. These hapless things, I hope that it proves to all you guys that you're not the only one that makes mistakes. And it should be right there at this separation. Okay, so I'm just double checking right here where this board here, this 4-foot board, exactly. Okay, so that's where this is going to sit. Now off the back end, I want it 6 inches off the back end. So I'm going to go ahead and measure 6 inches. I'm going to put 2 boards back there and then screw them down just to keep this secure. Okay, so I want the back end of this to cantilever over about 6 inches. So I've got a 8.5 inch piece of 2x4. And what this will allow me is there's 3.5 inches here and then a ½ inch here. So this is 4 inches. So this here is going to be another 4.5 inches here plus the 1.5 inches. So this will give me 4.5 plus 1.5 inches is 6 inches. So if I just screw this down and then bring this the truss up to this on both sides, this side and the other side, then this will give me my 6-inch overhang. Okay, so that gives me 6 inches off the back, and it looks like 8.25 and 8.25, perfect. So I've got 6 inches off the back, 8.25 inches off the front. And this is going to be perfect because this will give me a little overhang when I go to put my greenhouse on. Okay, so there is the ladder for the left side here. Now I put a normal rung in at 16-inch center here, and then I put, they think they're 41.75 inches here at 16-inch center. Now the reason I put this one because I wanted to get one extra support going this way before I started going that way. Now, if you wanted to, you could put center pieces in here, but I'm not going to because I don't think I need it. It's not that heavy. Now this one here should square itself up once I screw it to this and then screw it down to the walls. Okay, so remember we started this earlier. We have this piece right here, and then we're going to have bracing in here. Okay, so right here, I've still got this bevel here. I want to make sure that this is also completely level. So wow, that's almost perfect. Just a little bit more. Right there, that's perfect. Okay, that's perfect. So I'm going to screw these in. I'm just going to toenail them right here. And then same thing with this one. I'm going to screw that down. You'll notice that it's just bumped up a little bit. That's just because the board is a little bit warped. So I'm going to screw that down, screw this into this wall here first, and then I'll screw this in. Then I'm going to check it completely for level, and then this side will be done. And then we're going to build the ladders for the other side. It's done the same way as this side. We'll do this again on that side, and then all the roof bracing, all the joists will be done. I thought about getting the scaffold out, but then I thought by the time I got it all put together, I'd have this darn thing done. Got to fight the wind, the fencing, old age. Okay, so I started my first board dead center, and I went out to the outside here. Now, I also am coming out over about 3/4 of an inch because I'm going to have a facing on here. Now, I'm going to have metal on the roof also, but I'm going to have a facing board right here, fascia. So that's why I came out 3/4 of an inch. Now, on the end here, you'll notice that I'm hitting this new blocking that I put in for the fascia board, for the soffit I mean. But here's the deal, I'm not hitting anything through here until I get down there to the bottom there where I put another one. Now, I'm not going to worry about it because I'm putting metal on top of this. But if you do this and you feel compelled to put blocking in each one, it's probably a good idea. I'm just not going to do it because I don't think it's necessary. It's going to be screwed down well with metal, and I don't think it's going to lift up. I'm not using felt, so I think the metal is going to hold it down really well. So I'm not worried about blocking, but if you want to put it in, it's probably a good idea. I'm just not going to do it. Okay, so the metal that I'm using is 8 foot long. It's 38 inches wide, but it covers 3 feet. Basically, you lay it down here, the flat side down on the edge, and then the next one, which has the flat side, goes right over top of the ridge of the one next to it. It's really simple. And then I am screwing it down with 1-inch grommeted screws. Okay, so these are the closures right here. They've got a little glue back on them. You just pull them off. and they go right underneath the edge here. So that keeps like bugs and everything from getting inside of here. And then now this is the front top half, the front of the building. And my metal is going to go up over like this because the water's going to wick, well, not wick, it's just going to run this way like this. So the metal has to come up and go over like this. Now on the back side, it's sloped downward. And so I don't want my metal to go on top because the water coming down will go underneath. And so the flashing goes on top of the OSB, then the closure, and then this roofing metal. That way when the water comes running down, it just runs right off. And then the closures are interlocking, so it's like a jigsaw puzzle. The next one, which is right here, has got the knob on it, goes into the recess here. Okay, so now I've got a little bit of shoring up to do. This shed here is one long tunnel. And the only thing, I mean, I got a long wall here and a long wall here, and the only thing keeping it from kind of going back and forth is this small wall right here. And I've got most of it cut out, so there's not a lot of stability right here because I have a hole on both ends. And so what's keeping this from moving is just this small wall, and this header up here. Now, I was conscious of this when I built it, that this wall went on the outside of the long ones. Now, typically you would put a small wall on the inside, and that would keep it kind of from moving back and forth. But because this is on the outside, it has a lot more give. And so what I need to do is I need to shore up the inside right here to keep it more stable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put, this is the header, and these are on edge. And so I've got a 1/2 inch here that is, it's sitting back in. So I'm going to take a 1/2 inch of scrap OSB or the T111, whatever I have, and I'm going to put it right across here, a 3.5 inch piece. That way it'll fur it out. And then I'm going to put a 2x4 here and a 2x4 across. So what I'm doing is I'm furring it out and making it even with these first studs right here. And then once it's all even, then I'm going to go ahead and put in a 1/2 inch OSB all the way around. And so what that'll do is that'll keep it secure from moving back and forth. And I'm going to do the same on the other side. So I think that's what's going to keep this thing. I mean, it's pretty good right now, but I knew going into this that I was going to have to do something about it. And so I wanted them on the outside because I wanted a full 16 foot inside of here. And so, well, not a full 16 foot, I wanted as close as I could get. If these walls were inside, I would have lost 7 inches. And in doing it this way by furring it out, I'm only losing 3 inches because the thickness is a 1/2 inch here and then a thickness of a 1/2 inch. I mean, 1.5 inches of 2x4, 1.5 inches there, and all the OSB too. But I'm not losing 7 inches. So I knew going into it that I was going to have to do some securing. And I'm also going to do some in the middle also with some shelving. So when I get all done, it's going to be nice and solid. What I'm using is this shop grade 1/4 inch plywood, and I'm just going to tack it on with these galvanized nails. Let's see, they're 1.5 inches. Probably could use inch, but I have the 1.5 inches. So Okay, so the shed is mostly done. I've got the fascia and soffit and everything on. I'm waiting for the metal trim to come in. They didn't have it in stock. And so that's going to be pretty much it, except for the doors. I need to do the doors, and I'm going to do that after I do the greenhouse. Okay, so I have started now on building the greenhouse. The shed is mostly done. I got a little bit of the metal up there to finish. Cut some of that metal off. I've got to do something about it. It's a little bit wrinkled. That metal on there, the problem was when I ordered it, they gave me the straight 90 cut, and the front of that roof is beveled, and they should have given me the bevel cut, and they didn't. So when I push the metal in to screw it down, it makes those ripples, which I'm not happy with, but I didn't want to wait another 3 weeks to get this dried in because we've got rain coming in the next couple days. So I'm not sure what I'll do there. Maybe I'll pull it out and put a piece of wood behind. I don't know. But for now, it's dried in. The only thing left to do is metal on the side here and the back, and then I have to work on the doors. But for the most part, that and a little bit of trim, it's pretty much finished. So I put down a plate here. Now, I went and took a bunch of 2x4s and started painting them white. And I didn't think, because that's a bottom plate, and that's going to get another wall on top of it. So that didn't need to be painted, except for the edge. But that's all right. I just went and painted a bunch. So anyways, I'm going to start on the windows first. Now, I just made a little cut here, and it gives me the height and gives me the distance. The distance between the studs is going to be 22¼ inches, because each window is going to be 22¼ inches wide, and then they're 31½ inches tall. So I just made that kind of as a mock-up, but that's what the bottom plate, or the bottom part of the wall, is going to look like. And so that's the bottom plate, and that's going to be a top plate across. I'm going to go the whole 12 foot. So that's going to sit right here on this corner, and pretty much that's the way it's going to look all the way around. So the first thing that I need to do is work on building the windows. So the most expensive part of this build was the glass. I did actually buy it. I kept looking on Craigslist and whatnot and trying to look around and see if I could scrounge up some old windows, but every time I'd see them, they were like, you know, half broken and they were way expensive. And so I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go out and buy clean glass. Then I can just design the build around the specific size glass that I wanted. So I bought 23 pieces of glass. They're 1/8 inch tempered. They're 21 inches by 30 inches. Okay, so all of the windows are going to be made from 2x3s. Now, I didn't go out and buy a bunch of 2x4s and then rip them down to 2x3. I actually bought 2x3s. But if you have a bunch of 2x4s on hand, you can certainly rip them down to 2x3. Let's get started on making the windows. Okay, so I painted all of my 2x3s on 3 sides. I've left one wide side unpainted, and I'll explain why in a minute. Now, I cut 2 of these at 22¼ inches, and 2 of them at 28½ inches. So I'm going to run a channel here, 3/4 of an inch over and 3/4 of an inch deep. The glass is 1/8 of an inch, and the kerf of the blade is 1/8. So the problem is that it won't fit in. I mean, it fits in, but it's really snug. You have to kind of force it in. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to run my channel and then move my fence just a hair, like a 32nd of an inch, just to make this channel just a little bit wider, so that the glass will sit in there without having to force it in. Now, my pieces of glass are 21 by 30 inches, so it's 21 inches wide by 30 inches tall. Now, with my upright pieces, I'm going to, once I cut my channel, I'm going to take a sliver on the outside. Now, I'm cutting my channel on the side that I painted. And on this side, I'm going to take 1/8 of an inch off. I'm just going to take the blade width off. So 1/8 of an inch on each side, on each one, which takes off 1/4 of an inch. And then putting my glass in, I end up with 22¼ inches by 31½ inches tall. That's the overall size of my windows. Now you're probably wondering, why am I going to take 1/8 of an inch off? Well, here's the problem. There's a lot of rough surfaces, and sometimes the 2x3s aren't completely flat. So I'm kind of using it as a joiner or a planer to make this surface here completely flat, so it will marry right up to the studs that I have in my wall. So that's why I'm doing it that way. So I'm going to go ahead and run my channel first, and I've got my height set. I've got a little template here that should be just about right. Yeah, that's 3/4, and then 3/4 over, and that's perfect. Okay, so I'm going to run my channel down on the painted side. Okay, so I moved. Okay, so I got my fence. I got my blade up, and these are 1.5 inches wide, but I'm taking off 1/8. So it's going to be 1 3/8 inches is going to be the size or the width of my 2x3s when I'm done. So right about there. Okay, that looks really nice. Now it's a good thing that I did that, because I noticed that it's thin here and it's a little bit thicker down here. So it's a good thing that I did. That's actually about probably a 32nd more than, because I didn't, if I would have taken just a blade width off, I wouldn't have gotten a shaving like this, but that's okay. So what am I doing? I need my glass. So this should give me a perfect 22¼ inches wide by 31½ inches tall. Now there might be a little play in the window, and I'm okay with that because I'm going to caulk them anyways. And that right there is perfect. There's actually, what am I doing? Okay, so that is a perfect 22¼ inches wide by 31½ inches tall. Now to secure this, I don't have to worry about making sure that it's square because the glass itself is square. As long as this is tight, then this whole window should be square. So I'm going to pre-drill. So I'm going to pre-drill and countersink 3-inch screws right into the side piece. So I'm going to put 4 in, one here, and then one from the bottom up like this. And I'm going to do it in the beefy part here where I've got this extra, not in the front here, but toward the back. So just one screw in each corner, and that should give me a perfect window. Now I'm not using glue and I'm not using a lot of screws because I want to be able to take these out if I have to. Like that. Perfect window. Now I got a whole bunch of these to make. So now if there's any stupid bee, get out of here. Get out of here. Now if there's any rattle, there's a little bit there. That's just because of the thickness of the groove that I made. But I'm going to put caulk around all of this. And so that's going to keep that from rattling, and it's going to seal it right nice and tight. So, okay, I got a bunch more of these to make. Okay, so this is going to kind of give you an idea of how this is going to work. Each stud is going to be 22¼ inches nice and tight. Okay, so each window is going to fit
in between these studs. And the inside dimensions, of course, is 22¼ inches wide, because that's the width of my window. So I'm going to build the windows, put in my studs. Now each stud is only 31½ inches tall, the same as the window. So I'm going to run all my windows, run my bottom plate, and then I'm going to put a top plate right here across. Then I'm going to put another plate on top with more windows. So basically, it's going to be a wall in itself. I'll put a top plate all the way across 12 feet, and then do the exact same thing that I've done here, up to 2 layers. Now the reason why this is only 4 feet, because I have another plate there that's 8, and this is a 12-foot wide greenhouse. So I'm going to do the same over there and then marry them together. So I'm going to keep going with my windows all the way down the 12 feet, and it should perfectly end up just like this on the other side. Now as far as the window goes, I'm going to bring it all the way out flush onto the 2x4, because if I was to center it, it's going to give me like, I don't know, what is it, 1/4 inch or something like that on each side, and then water could actually sit in here. So I don't want to do that. I'm going to bring it all the way out to the front. So the window is flush right here like that. So no standing water.
Okay, so there is the first row of windows. Now it's got a bottom plate. It has the 6 windows, and then it has another plate on top to tie them together. Now I did go around the east side there too, and I've got 3 windows there. And then you'll notice on the end here, there's just a little spot here that I'm going to fill in. I'll just fill that in with plywood or something. And so that gives me 9 windows on the bottom. And then I'm going to do another one, 9 windows on the top. And then for the west side here, I'm just going to leave that open because I want to be able to get in and out. And since the door is going on that side, I'm just going to have to kind of custom build the wall there anyway. So for now, I'm working on the south side and the east side with 9 more windows on top. So I'm going to put another plate down with studs, and then put the windows in, and then another plate on top. And then I'll tie them together with a plate on the very top of that. Okay, so there's the start of the top one. And I was able to measure and leave a space 22¼ inches between each one, and put in my studs, and then stand it up, and then screw the plate to the bottom piece. And then I'm just going to put the top plate on after all of my windows have been set in. Okay, so here it is with all 18 windows on the south and east side. And like I said, I'm going to leave the west side open temporarily because I want to be able to get in and out. And then once I get the roof done, then I'm going to start on that west wall. And then we'll put the door in also on that side. Okay, to secure these windows, I'm using 8 screws each. I'm putting 2 on the bottom, 2 on the top, and then 2 on each side. And I'm pre-drilling them. And I'm using some nice long screws. Now I'm using the T25s. You'll see there. They're a good screw. They work a lot better than the regular Phillips. And if I need to pull these out, it's simple enough just to be able to back those screws out and pull the window out if I needed to.
Okay, so for the roof, I'm going to put a ledger board up here where I'm going to attach my roof rafters, and they're going to go down to that front wall. But what I'm going to do is the ledger board up here is going to go over 1 foot. So I'm going to measure the bottom plate from the outside of the shed and come over the same distance to here, and then go back 1 foot exactly. So it's going to cantilever over, the roof is going to cantilever over 1 foot, and it's going to come over 1 foot from the front also. Because I want to have a little bit of distance right here for the door. And I'm going to do the same on the other side, even though I don't have to, but I want it to look the same. I want it to be, I don't want it to be like, overhang here and then not over there to just kind of look off. So I'm going to do it on both sides. 1 foot over on that side and this side, and So I've got some painted 2x4s to put my ledger board up there. I'm going to go all the way up to the top, just underneath this trim. Okay, I screwed up. This board here was supposed to be 1.5 inches shorter on each end because my outside rafter is going to screw into the outside of this. And so, yeah, and even though that's end grain, I know, but I'm going to actually screw it in multiple places along the roof. So it's not just going to hold into the end grain here, but yeah, I screwed up and, but I'm making this up. But as I said, I'm making this up as I go along. Okay, so the way that I know if my wall is perfectly square. Now I'm going to put my level on it also, but because everything should be square. But I measured my bottom plate to the wall, and I made another piece here, which was 83 5/8 or something like that. And then I pushed the wall in so that it touches this plate, and then I set this here, make sure that's all the way in. My wall is in. And then I just make my mark right there. That way I know that the top of this wall to the shed is the same as the bottom of the wall to the shed. And then of course I put my level on it and it should be perfect. Because I've been very careful about making sure everything is perfectly square here. So right about there, push it into that mark, and that is perfect. That's perfect. So I didn't want to just trust the level. I wanted to make sure that my measurements were correct as well. Let me make my original mark. And then just go back 1.5 inches from that. And that's going to be the size of all of my rafters. Okay, so this, get out of here, bee. So this is coming right across here, sitting on this wall here, on this top plate. And then this is going to be my front piece that's going to cantilever over about 1 foot, well, exactly 1 foot actually. And it's going to get a rafter across here like this on the outside. And then this will get screwed into here all the way down. Every rafter will be like this. So I'm going to go ahead and cut all of my rafters and then screw them into the ledger board, and then screw them into, except this one, screw them into each of the top plate above the studs here. Okay, so since this is 12 feet wide, and I'm going to cantilever over 1 foot on each side, that makes it 14. So I cut 2 pieces at 7 feet. And this should go just like this. So it's flush right here. And then what I will do is I will take a piece of, I have some cedar fence board that's 5.5 inches. So it will come down here, right here, it'll come 3.5, 4.5, then 5. So it'll come down a couple inches here, and it'll catch all of this. So it'll tie the roof into the wall also. So I'm tying everything together as much as possible. And also that trim, the purpose of the trim is to just get rid of all these seams and make it look nicer. Good thing I caught my mistake before I actually screwed this in. This piece should not be 7 feet. It should be just under 7 feet. I needed it to fall dead center on this stud right here. because it's not going to be 7 feet. It's not going to be 14 feet all the way across on the top. It's going to be 3 inches shy, because on the outside, the top truss is going to be, or not truss, but the top rafter is going to be on the outside here. It's not going to go up against it like the rest of them are. So this needs to be cut down to fall straight on this half of that stud right there. So I'm just going to cut it like this. I'm just going to eyeball it like that, so it falls half on that, and then just lop that off. I took it off the other end because the other end was a little more dinged up. So okay, this should work out. 10.5 inches cantilever over. Okay, right there. Perfect. Now the other one is going to come up against us here, and I don't want to get this close to screw it into this this rafter. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a piece of blocking on each side to screw it to. It won't look the greatest inside, but I know that this, if I try to do that, something's going to split. Either this is going to split here, or this rafter is going to split. So I don't want to try to catch half of that. So just put some blocking in there and then screw it to it, and we're good to go. Okay, so you're probably wondering why I didn't take this faceplate in and give it a bevel a little bit so that it follows the same bevel as the rafter. Well, here's the deal. These closures are going to sit just like this, and once that plastic comes down, it'll come right across the closure like this, and it'll sit perfectly. I mean, it may a little bit bend, but just it's so minute that you won't even notice it, and it's going to look perfect. It's not going to be no problem. It's not going to be a problem at all. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and finish up the rafters. And this faceplate, screw the rafters into place on the ledger board, screw them into the studs here and the top plate, and then move on to the end boards. So I just held up this piece, the end piece, and just I couldn't find my pencil, so I found a Sharpie laying around. So I don't know where it came from, but okay. So there is one end. I got to do it on both sides. Will it stay just for a quick second? Yeah, it'll stay. It's got a bevel on it, so dunk right on the head, right? That would be funny, wouldn't it? That's the kind of stuff I do. You guys who watch my channel a lot know how much I get hurt. I'm always like, I got cuts everywhere. I got a big gash here on just off my thumb, and I don't know how I got it. So that was a bad camera view. I didn't realize that this whole thing was blocking it. But I just held it up here and then just made my mark, cut it, and then just put screws in it. I'm going to put some bracing in here. I'm not just going to put blocks in across, because that's not going to help at all. I'm actually going to put some bracing in. I'm going to cut away and put some 2x across to hold this in. Okay, so what I'm doing for this one here is I am going on the one inside here, and I'm cutting out a shape of a 2x4 right here. I went up about 1.5 feet, then I came down about 1.5 feet and did it here also. And then I'm going to do the same on this one once I lay my 2x4. So it's going to go from that one through this one and then through this one, and then be screwed at the top. Okay, so there it is, all screwed into place. And I'm just going to do this in 3 more spots, just like this on the other side, and then down toward the front wall. Okay, so the structure of the roof is done. Now I decided to only go with one bracing on the top where I did the cutaway to hold that cantilever part, because I think it's pretty strong, even, you know, after putting my centerpieces in. So I did the same thing on the other side, just went with the one on the top. Okay, so it's all painted, and I even painted a little bit of the windows here. And I accidentally did do a few splashes on the green wall that I need to touch up with green paint. But anyways, and I actually got carried away, and I painted the front here, forgetting that I was actually going to put a piece of 1x6 on the front. But that's okay, no big.